All right, so I'm going to do something pretty cool today, which is dive into multi-line Rust code completion with CodeWhisperer, which is a new feature, to my knowledge, that's been released in less than 24 hours. So I wanted to try it out, and I'm going to share my screen and see what happens. All right, let's go ahead and go here. You can see that I've got a live stream Visual Studio Code project set up here. So the first thing that we're going to do is that I'm going to create a new project. So with Rust, you can do cargo new. And let's just call this multi-line test, right? And now if I go inside of here, I'm also going to copy a make file just because I'm a fan of make files. We'll copy that right here. Okay, so we have multi-line test here. So I think one of the easier ones to play around with would be to do a calculator. So I'm going to go through here and I'm going to put a calculator, you know, a calculator program in Rust. Perfect, right? So I'm sure there's probably tons and tons of examples that CodeWhisperer can pull from to do this. And I could even give it more context. I think in general, with when you're programming with a generative AI tool, the more context you can give it, the better. So let's even give it some things like, maybe like a design spec, right? So we'll say this is a tool that will use several functions and then call them to perform a calculation in sequence, right? So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And so we can actually go ahead and do this now. So it's already smart enough, right? It knows. Now check this out. Let's see if it can do multi-line. There we go. So we see it's got 2 lines now that it's able to complete, which is pretty slick. This was one of the things that has been, I guess, recently added to CodeWhisperer, which makes it, I would say, a one-to-one competitor to GitHub Copilot. So next up here, we can do see what it can do. So if I do Apple C, I believe it'll give me a prompt here as well. I always forget or is it Control C? But basically, you can tell it to give you a prompt. Maybe there is no prompt. I could even give it this. I could say subtract, right? And now, if I do Command C, what does it give me? I think essentially it's giving me the completion that I want here. There we go. And we can see there's, again, multi-line completion here. And then if we go and we do divide or multiply, whatever, then it should be able to figure out a multiply function. And then if we do the last one, should be divide. And it's smart enough to know that that's what I'm going to do next. And then we've got a divide here. So not bad. Now we want to obviously wrap it all together inside of our main. So let's recreate the main here. And we can even say like main function that uses all calc functions or something like that. And then we can, now this would be a good one. I'm very curious. We'll do a multi-line complete. And if I do, so we see, yeah, right. So this has actually massive multi-line complete here in terms of this suggestion. I'm going to go ahead and accept it. So let A10 be 5. And then it goes through and it tests out the whole thing. So not bad. Now, one of the things that I do recommend, and this is why I like a makefile when you're doing multi-line complete, is I think it's a good idea to format code that has been generated by a tool like CodeWhisperer. So if I go ahead and I say make format, boom, there we go. We can see that, in fact, we can just clean it up a little bit. And if I say make lint, we can double check. In fact, yeah, looks good. So wow, this is, I would say, very, very impressive what CodeWhisperer, how quick they've been able to get Rust support. That's multi-line Rust support. This was one of the things I was missing that now makes me really like CodeWhisperer quite a bit. And I feel like I'm going to be very comfortable using it as my go-to generative AI tool, especially because of the way they developed CodeWhisperer. I feel ethically good about the process and how secure it is, and especially making sure that there's lots of toggles and things like that. So if we look at maybe another test real quick, that would be a good thing to try out. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to check this in. So we'll say git add multi-line. and then we'll commit it, adding multi. There we go, and we'll push it. So next here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try an AWS type tool, which would be, I think, a better real kind of way to test out a multi-line capability. So let's try to do like a chameleon tool that can work with S3 or something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say cargo new, and we'll call this S3 CLI. How about that? And next, I'm going to CD into this tool here. And then I'm going to copy a makefile above here. Got it. And then let's look inside of this CLI tool. Now, this is where the context, I think, is going to be critical. So, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say what I want it to be. So I'm going to say, now it is pretty cool. Like there's some leak code that it's copying from, I suppose, which that's another thing that's really cool about CodeWhisperer that makes it different than Copilot is that the attribution, which I think is awesome. So let's go ahead and do this. And let's say an S3 CLI lister tool that accepts parameters from the command line. Right. So let's see what it does. If we can just do it without using third-party libraries or anything. Although now that I say that, I'm going to have to probably use copy some stuff I did before, which is this. Probably. Let's actually see if I have another. We have this S3 list is probably what I would care. Yeah, this is probably what I care about. So this is maybe one of the trickier things to do initially is to actually get the right dependencies. I think this looks pretty good. And then we can actually go through and just say cargo run just to pull them all in. It's kind of annoying that it's waiting for some kind of cargo check operation. Running cargo check. Or maybe it's already doing it for me automatically. Okay, that looks good. And then while that's building, looks like it's going to be fine. I'll go back here and we'll just say, list maybe a function that can list all buckets. And so this function, I would put some information here, list all my buckets in the account. Let's see what it does, listing all buckets. That's not exactly what I need though, because I'm going to need to import some code. So that didn't come out great. So, but if I steal some other code that I've written earlier, maybe I need to give it more context. So let's try that out. So we can see maybe that's the trigger here. And then we can say list all buckets. How about that? And we can do fn list buckets. That looks pretty good. There we go, list buckets. And maybe there could be a function that could partially match or something like that. So we could do like, list, or actually that would be interesting, is maybe list objects. We could say list all objects in a bucket by name. There we go. That's an easy one. That's an easy one. So this is good. So we have function, list object, bucket, multi-line complete. Yes, there we go. Awesome. So there are some things that are not 100% working, which we can probably fix though. Let's go ahead and say this. So make formats. Now, list buckets, the trait bound is not satisfied, is implemented. So this is giving me something that doesn't look correct. Let's look at some code I wrote earlier and see how I handled it. So I did list buckets. So I guess I could just copy code I wrote earlier, which I know works. Why not just do that? And let's see here. list buckets. So the return type, I think, well, we're printing the buckets here. So let's look at the return type that I had before, which is S3. We had something like that before. So let's change the return type. How about that? Does that fix it? List buckets result. Let's try that out. List bucket. Yeah, I guess I'm having some list, but cannot find list buckets in module types. So that isn't as good of a suggestion as I was hoping. But I think, again, I should be able to just copy this. I was missing the OK. That might have been the issue. So in fact, I could probably take this stanza there, go back here, and copy from there down. And is that looking, that I just have to close it out? That looks good. Okay. So now why is this giving me a wait? Oh, I see. So we need to do it. We need to do I forget. I always forget if async is first here. Yeah, I think it's, there you go, because we're using the async library. So maybe first, let's start with this, which now we have to just call it, and we can just say, list buckets. Let's try that first. We'll do list buckets. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do just list buckets. And I think we could just throw that away, right? We could just say like out is equal to list buckets, right? Wouldn't that work? I always forget the syntax here. You can't do that. Okay. Well, let's just say, let's see what the code completion tells us. If we say list, oh, I see. I have to do the await. So we'll call list all buckets. Okay. So it was potentially, we would want to do await dot unwrap. Oh, and I also have to do async here. So async, there we go. So there's some things here that are, main function is not allowed to be async. Oh, that's weird. So that could be a little bit tricky. Oh, because I think I've done this before. We need to do this at the beginning, right? Is it that Tokyo main? So then it can be async. How about that? Now let's try to run it. So we'll format it. Make format cargo run. Okay, there we go. We got something working. So it isn't magic, right? You still have to understand Rust, but I think there's some interesting things here. I'm sure as things get better with the Rust integration with CodeWhisperer, we should get better and better examples. So I guess I could try a little bit more if I want to be ambitious here. Let's go ahead and try this out. Let's try to list a object in the buckets by name. So we'll say list objects in a bucket by name. So now we're going to do async. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now it's kind of picking up the pattern from what I did before, which is cool. And then let's see what it gives. So here we go. We got a multi-line completion here. So all I'm gonna need to do is pass in, some kind of a parameter. So I'm gonna comment. Well, I guess we'll leave them both in there. So now I'll say list objects, and then I'm gonna pass in for my personal website here. So looks good. All right, let's go ahead and run it. Cargo new or cargo run. Uh-oh. So we have some issues here in that. Well, that's an interesting. Let's go ahead and say make format, make lints, and so what we have. So this is a part where it would be cool if we had the ability to debug tracebacks, right? But let's run it one more time. Let's see what we see here. So it says thread main panicked at the bucket you're attempting may be addressed using the, oh, I see. So there's some kind of weird thing. Let's try this. Let's try a different bucket. Let's try that. Let's try that bucket here. There might be something unusual about that bucket. Huh. So it says some of the buckets must be addressed using the endpoint. So I guess it's the issue is that this we're calling the bucket name incorrectly. So yeah, anyway, we got something kind of working. I'll just put a note here that says fix, right? I can fix this in the future. So fix this API call. But so far, pretty happy with this CodeWhisperer stuff in terms of multi-line complete with Rust. Pretty exciting. I might even try to see if it can do the Bedrock API. That would be awesome. All right, talk to you soon.